In this podcast episode, former National Security Advisor John Bolton and entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy engage in a discussion about the role of the United States in global affairs. They debate whether the U.S. should actively use its diplomatic and military power to ensure national security, with both participants presenting contrasting views shaped by their experiences and perspectives. Bolton opens the debate by emphasizing the historical context of American foreign policy, arguing that the U.S. has always been involved in global affairs and that isolationism is a dangerous myth. He points out that the U.S. has benefited from its engagement in international conflicts, particularly after the Cold War, which he believes has led to a misunderstanding of the threats facing the nation today. Bolton contends that the U.S. must maintain a strong military presence globally to deter adversaries like China and Russia, asserting that a retreat from international commitments would embolden these nations. In contrast, Vivek Ramaswamy highlights the failures of recent U.S. interventions, particularly in Iraq and Afghanistan, arguing that these conflicts have not advanced American interests. He points to the financial and human costs of these wars, questioning the effectiveness of an interventionist foreign policy. Ramaswamy suggests that the U.S. should focus on its own borders and internal issues rather than acting as the world's policeman. The discussion then shifts to NATO and the responsibilities of U.S. allies. Bolton criticizes European nations for not meeting their defense spending commitments, arguing that the U.S. should not bear the burden of defending wealthy countries that fail to invest in their own security. He emphasizes the importance of NATO in maintaining stability in Europe and countering Russian aggression. Ramaswamy, however, argues that the U.S. should not be obligated to defend countries that do not contribute fairly to their own defense. He suggests that the U.S. should leverage its relationships with allies to ensure they take on more responsibility for their security. Ramaswamy's perspective reflects a broader skepticism about the effectiveness of multilateral institutions and the need for a more pragmatic approach to foreign policy. A significant portion of the debate focused on the rising threat of China, particularly in relation to Taiwan. Bolton asserts that the U.S. must be prepared to defend Taiwan against potential Chinese aggression, arguing that failure to do so would undermine American credibility and embolden adversaries. He emphasizes the need for increased defense spending and military readiness in the Asia-Pacific region. Ramaswamy counters that the U.S. should prioritize its resources and focus on deterring China rather than getting entangled in conflicts that do not directly serve American interests. He expresses concern that the U.S. military is overstretched due to ongoing commitments in other regions, which could weaken its ability to respond effectively to a crisis in Taiwan. Ramaswamy advocates for strengthening alliances with countries like India and Vietnam to counter China's influence without overextending U.S. military resources. The debate also touches on the consequences of U.S. interventionism in the Middle East and its impact on global stability. Bolton defends the U.S. actions in Afghanistan and Iraq, arguing that they were necessary to protect American interests and prevent terrorist attacks. He claims that the absence of U.S. military presence in these regions would lead to a resurgence of terrorist groups. Ramaswamy, however, points to the long-term consequences of these interventions, arguing that they have created instability and failed to achieve their intended goals. He highlights the human and financial toll of these wars, questioning whether the U.S. should continue to engage in military actions that do not yield clear benefits. As the debate progresses, both participants articulate their visions for the future of U.S. foreign policy. Bolton calls for a return to a robust military posture and a commitment to defending American interests globally. He argues that the U.S. must not shy away from using its military power to deter adversaries and protect its allies. Ramaswamy, on the other hand, advocates for a more restrained approach, emphasizing the need to prioritize domestic issues and rebuild national pride. He argues that the U.S. should focus on strengthening its economy and military capabilities without becoming embroiled in conflicts that do not directly serve its interests.